While there isn't just one narrative structure that just gets repeated over and over again, hero's journey, it may come as no surprise to you that there are about 2 to 3 very popular narrative structures given the culture that they are presented in. So today I want to show you the top 3 narrative structures that you can find in American cinema. All right, here we are in Subtxt, and I will show you. Let's go down to the premise builder, and you will see that when it first loads up, it has a default story form that's already set. The 2 big things you want to look at are the narrative personality here at the top and the pivotal elements on the right. So here on the left, we have the 4 major through lines of the story assigned to different areas of conflict, and they're all nicely balanced out. So the typical way, so all 3 of these all have the same setup here in terms of narrative personality. You have the objective story plot is always about physics, so all the conflict comes from the things people are doing. The main character's personal baggage is always some sort of status that they have. Usually they're the one, or they're the king, or they have something that they're just not comfortable yet, their place in the world. And then the obstacle character, who's the person who stands in the way of them continuing to do things the way that they always have done, usually has a fixed mindset, like most likely not they believe in them, or they have some sort of drive that can impact and influence this main character. And then finally, the relationship story, which is usually between these 2, it's usually a mentorship, but it always has to deal with manipulations and different ways of thinking, how they're going to work through a usually dysfunctional relationship at the beginning that then goes to the end. All right, so this is the basic narrative personality. That thing's not going to change. The only thing that's going to change is over here. Now, right now, it loaded up and it had a void. That's because I need to switch it over. So to be completely truthful, the most popular narrative structure is this one. So in Western culture, the most popular narrative structure is this one here, avoid. The second one is going to be pursuit. So what the heck does this mean? So what this means is that whichever one you assign to the main character, that's going to be their main problem element. That's what the story is going to be about. So in these stories, the main character is always avoiding something, and then they usually end up pursuing something at the end. The second most popular one has the main character going after something, and then at the end, they decide to avoid it or just run away from it. So when I was teaching at CalArts, this was the most popular one, because when you are a freshman at CalArts or a sophomore at CalArts and you work, and you're pursuing your dreams, you want to make a student film that is about a character who is pursuing their dreams, and then at the end, they avoid it and run away. So this was the most popular one at CalArts. This one is the one that's the most popular one in Western American culture. And then the third most popular one has to do with these 2 elements, control and free. And it's not necessarily that control is the problem or that freedom is the problem, and definitely the second one is never an issue for American cinema. But what happens is, whereas these are the problem that the main character is going to be focused on, one or the other, in these, it's going to be the work that the main character does. It's going to be a slightly different story form, in that down here, when it says, what is the argument of the premise? Part of a story's purpose is to argue a particular point of view of how to do things. So those first 2 are arguing it from a point of view of you have to give up this thing. So in other words, if it was avoid, you need to give up running away from things and instead go chase after them. If I flipped it to pursuit, now it's going the other direction. So now you got to stop always chasing after everything and instead avoid it. So those are stories where it's arguing, give up this old way of doing things. The thing with control and free, and this one's a really popular one too, is this is one where the main character is on the right path, and then it's the obstacle character who ends up changing their point of view. So if I come in here and I do the third most popular, which I believe is this one. So in other words, this is about the work. It's no longer something that the main character is doing wrong or something that they don't feel is right. It's that, oh, I don't like to be controlled, so I'm going to advocate for freedom, or I'm going to try and be as free as I possibly can be. And just point of fact, if you are coming from a dramatic and theory background and you're wondering, why isn't this uncontrolled? It has a lot to do with the fact that control and uncontrolled, which is usually understood as not being in control, are really about control. They're not about free. And this becomes particularly problematic when you deal with large language models that have certain trajectories and certain vectors where control is on here on the left, and then where uncontrolled is really close to this and not as close to this one here. So you'll see sometimes there'll be some terminology that's a little changed that I have adapted and made better. So that's why you see this free here. So when it's the story's about the work that's being done, see, it's like about the work, actual work here, steadfast, then what they look out and they see as being the problem, people telling them what to do, and then they move towards this free. So that's the top three. And then you'll see, look, the obstacle character is going to be the main character version, but just projected out into the obstacle character. They have that same arc. It's just now you're seeing it in somebody else. The other one would be this one. I guess this one actually is. If they see being free as being the problem, so less about freedom, but more about things frenetic all over the place, then they want to bring it under control. And then that would be this story form. So I guess actually this one is probably the third. This one's the fourth. The point is stories where it's about getting rid of something, then it's going to be one of these two. Stories that are about staying the course, it's going to be one of these two. And the reason why these two are the only two that we're going to look at is because if I go up here and I look at, let's look at physics here. So if I just go into the objective story, and then you'll see it's made up of these four types. So when you have an objective story where you're going through and you're looking to see, okay, where's the conflict happening in this story? Where's the focus of it? Out of these four, the most popular one for Western American culture is this one right here, obtaining, because we like to win and we like to achieve things and we like to control things and we like to dominate things. So we go into here and you'll see which one of these four issues do you think is the most important thing to Western culture. All right. If you picked self-interest, you win the prize. And let's look inside of self-interest. What do we see? Self-interest is made up of pursuit, avoid, control, free. This is why it is the most popular story form, because this is the cultural focus. It's like the most important thing, the individual achieving things. Sure, your approach and your attitude is important. And yeah, sometimes it's okay to think of other people, but really it's all about you and all the problems that cause, and whether or not you are the one that needs to change the way that you're doing it, or just keep going along the course and get everybody else to change. It'll be one of these two axes. So that's why it keeps showing up. Another place you can see this in Subtxt is if I go into story form connections. So I have about 590 different story forms that I've put in here, personally vetted for their accuracy. If I came up here and I said, all right, I just want to see all the stories where the main character is getting rid of that problematic element, and we make that problematic element the most popular one, which is avoid. All right. Now, you'll see that there's quite a bit here. Actually going to add in, because sometimes you can give up and then it doesn't turn out good for you. But for the most part, Nebraska, Trainwreck, look, Lion King and the Black Panther are the same exact story form, because it's about a person who's supposed to be the king, who's running away from his problems, and then at the end resolves them when he goes after and chases after them. Same thing with Mad Max, Star Trek Wrath of Khan, Old Henry, if you've seen it, great movie. Bumblebee, 1917 is okay. It's not a complete story, but it's close. This is a great short story by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And then the most recent one, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. It's very, 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 very popular. And I used to have it set as the default one for Subtxt, which is why you see that. The problem is when you get into the players, when you have the main character's personal problem is avoid, it makes them the antagonist of the story, which I don't want to get into, and that gets really complex. It's much easier if I set it to pursuit, because then that makes them the protagonist of the story. So El Mariachi, Witness, Body Heat, The Terminator, The Limey, LA Confidential, Looper, E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, Star Wars, No Sudden Move, The Harder They Fall, which is a cool Western recently. Train to Busan is really clear. One of the story forms in RRR. And if you've seen the most recent series of Griselda, that's in there. The only difference with Griselda, and this is what I wanted to bring up, is Griselda does not turn out, it's not happy-go-lucky, everything turns out great. So if I wanted to show you the real story, so this means the plot is resolved, everything works out great, and then the main character resolves their personal issues. You'll see these are a little more closer to home. If I went back to avoid as being the problem, all right, so you see we got more stories here where the main character is avoiding. And then that third one I was talking about, let's switch it to steadfast, but instead of avoid, let's make the problem free. I forgot. It's down here at the bottom. These are ones that I've changed. Okay, free. All right, so it's steadfast, success, good, free. All right, so then these are Return to Me, Whale Rider, Disaster Artist, October Sky. Okay, those are ones where the main... Oh, I'm sorry. See, this is the thing. I was not thinking. So I had it set as the problem. So these are stories where the problem is too much freedom, or they're driven by freedom. That's actually what October Sky is. So he's driven by wanting to be free. Let's do this correctly. And instead of this, let's do the focus. Add that in. And now let's look at free. All right. Now this is, okay, this is what I wanted. Back to the Future. Same story form as Shrek. Same story form as Moana. Die Hard. Young Guns. Top Gun Maverick. Glory. Well, Poor Things, not really. And then the most recent, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Great story. Really good. All those are the same exact story form where the main character is focused on the fact that they can't be free, or that things aren't free enough. And so then they direct or guide things in the direction that they want. But you'll see there's actually a ton of them in here. This might actually be the most popular. And then let's do Control, just to do the other side of it. All right, Aaron Brockovich, Kung Fu Panda, Last Jedi, huge fans of that. Hacksaw Ridge was one I was thinking of. The Jungle Book, the original animated one. Bad Trip, which is a funny recent comedy. Beauty and the Beast. And then Another Round, which is a great foreign film recently. The only thing I would say is I would also add in here, I don't want to get into this here, but the mental sex of we're talking Western culture here. So male mental sex, sorry. That's the emphasis is on cause and effect and solving problems. So you'll see Another Round dropped out. Right? So those are the top 4, let's say top 4 story forms that you'll find in American Western culture. Yeah, see, these are probably the most popular ones. So if I was to say this is the most popular Western culture one, it would be a main character who knows that they're on the right track, and they get success when they kind of direct things the way that they want them. Doesn't that sound like a American Western culture story? The second one would probably be the changed one with the pursuit as the problem. I keep forgetting to flip that back. So when you're on steadfast, that's when you want to look at the focus, like where the work is being done. When you flip it back to changed, then you got to put this back on problem and then look at avoid. Okay, that's it for the top 4 story forms, the top 4 narrative structures of Western culture, American cinema. If you have any questions about any of this, and just so you know, those are just the top 4. There's at least 30,000 more different narrative structures that you can find in Subtxt, if not more. But that's probably a good start. So if you have any questions about anything that I've just gone over, please leave them down below. Otherwise, I will see you next time.